I have a question. In Revelation 5, at the beginning and ending of the book, it refers to those under the earth. Who is that referring to?
So there's no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth. So it's three. He's describing there's three groups. This three group thing keeps coming up all the time. So there's no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth that's able to open the book. So you see this repetition of threes. There's always the three parts to the kingdom. And so you can the three parts or the three groups of people are described in many different ways. Here in verse 3, it's in heaven or in earth or under the earth. You'll notice in verse 13, it's every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such as in the sea and all that are in them. There's the first five. And then you go to verse 14, and then you see the four beasts saying Amen, and then 4 and 20 elders fall down and worship. So there's seven groups. There's seven groups of people. So you'll see this three-part repetition. It actually describes all the people, all the three different groups of people in the kingdom. And this is, you'll notice in Revelation 5, when you have, after he takes the scroll and sits upon the throne, in verse 8, when he takes the book, then you see the first group, the four beasts and the 24 elders, they fall down before the Lamb and they sing the song, right? You're worthy to take the book and open the seals. So that's the first song by the first group. And then in verse 11, I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne and the beasts and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, actually 144,000. And then they sing the second song. So that's the second group, right?
Oh.
The worthy is the Lamb to receive power. And then the verse 13 introduces a third group, and the third group is comprehensive in terms of everybody else. So you see the three parts of the kingdom, or the decree going out to the three different groups that are describing the kingdom. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
So this is the same thing. If you go to Daniel, for example, if you go to Daniel, look at Daniel chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar is describing the kingdom, and in verse 4, when they're calling everybody to bow down and worship, the herald cries out aloud and says, "It's commanded to you, O peoples and nations and languages." So you see the three groups. The first group are the peoples,
The nations.
and then the second group are the nations, and the third group is the languages. And you see the same thing in verse 29. At the end, when Nebuchadnezzar realizes that God is God, he says, "I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," right?
Mm-hmm.
So the kingdom is described in terms of three groups: the peoples, the nations, and then the languages. You see the same thing in Daniel chapter 4, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar is writing this chapter. He says, "Unto all the people and the nations and languages that dwell on all the earth." So when you deal with the peoples and nations and languages, you're actually describing everybody that dwells on the earth. Sometimes the idea of all dwelling on the earth is looked at as a fourth group, but here you can see that it's actually the peoples and nations and languages are actually together. Those three groups are all the people on the earth. And this isn't just in Babylon. You see the same thing in Daniel chapter 6. When Darius is speaking, the end of chapter 6, verse 25, it says, "Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth."
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of describing these three groups, the three parts of the kingdom, or the three groups of people, they're describing all the people that dwell on the earth. So this is where the three parts of the kingdom come into play. And this is where the book of Revelation, Revelation 5 gives you a microcosm of the rest of the book. So you see the first group in Revelation 5, verses 8 through 10, actually describes taking the book and opening the seals. That's the seals. And the seven seals describe the first group, or the group that are connected to the most holy place. That's where the living creatures are. And then When you deal with the 144,000, which is the next group or the numbered group, then that's the second group, and you're actually dealing with the trumpets, and you're dealing with the second group. And then, of course, the third group is the all the seven plagues. That's the last group. So you have the seals, the trumpets, and the plagues, describing the revelation of the king and the revelation of the proclamation of the decree goes out, and it goes to the peoples, then it goes to the nations, and then it goes to the languages, or it goes to the seals, then it goes to the trumpets, and then it goes to the plagues. Now there's a fourth part in there, and that's the porch. But anyway, this three parts of the kingdom. That's why you see that. So the group under the earth is described here as the third group. So there's no one in heaven, nor in the earth, nor under the earth. By the way, under the earth actually describes what we would call dead people, right?
Yeah.
And spiritually, the idea of those in the outer darkness are dead people. They're in the realm of the darkness or the realm of death.
Right.
So the third group is always the furthest extreme. They're the ones that are in the greatest darkness.
Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their dead."
It's right. Let the dead bury their own dead.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Nancy?
Yes, thank you. So under the earth is kind of like the same as the people in the sea.
Yes, same idea. It's the last group of people,
Okay. Thank you.
the last of the three. But it's interesting. You can see in Revelation 5, you see not only the three groups, but like I mentioned in the Song of the Third, there's seven groups of people mentioned. So that means that anyone that has not anyone any person on the earth that hasn't heard the message when the message went to the first group of people, or anybody that hasn't heard or made a choice when the message went to the second group of people, then everybody is covered by what happens with the third group. There's no one that's going to be missed.
Okay. I would think also, in some sense, can it be, on one level described, in everybody who's ever lived? So the people who are in heaven, there actually are some people in heaven who've been translated or who received a special resurrection. There's actually people living on the earth, and then there's dead people who are in the grave, literally under the earth.
Right.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
It can also
None of them can open the book.
Right. And that's the point, right?
Yes. Yes.
There's no one anywhere at any time in any space. And yes, you can do this. You can put the three groups over time, or you can put it in terms of space. You can actually put it in terms of the individual. Like there's three parts of me, right? There's my soul, my body, my will. So the point is there's a process, there's a progression. And what is the lowest part of you? Well, the lowest part of you is your flesh. It's your body. That's the outer part. It's not the higher parts. So I mean, it's interesting. Again, the pattern repeats in many different ways and in many different ideas. But it's interesting in the book of Daniel, you see clearly that the ancients understood their kingdoms in terms of these three parts. That's what's neat about the book of Daniel. So Nebuchadnezzar does it, Belshazzar does it, Darius does it. And so when God explains the prophecy in terms of those three parts, so when you go to Daniel 7, for example, and you look at Daniel 7, 13 and 14, when the Son of Man receives dominion, it says in glory and the kingdom, he says that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. Well, then now you begin to understand that he's saying that every earth is going to have to choose whether they're going to serve or worship him, and they're described in terms of the three groups: peoples, nations, or languages. And the gospel starts with peoples, and then it goes to the nations, and then it goes to the languages. And by the way, this is very interesting because in the kingdom, the first group of people were the peoples of the nation languages. They're the ones that could read and write in the language of the kingdom. They understood the language. So the decree could be written down. That's why the first group did the seals of the book, because they understand the language. They can read the seals. They can read the proclamation. The second group are the nations, and they can't read and write the language. So they were communicated by trumpets. They're actually described as the army of God. They would hear the sound of the trumpet, and then they would know what to do based on the sound of the trumpet. You see the same thing in the book of Exodus. And then, of course, the last group of people, the languages, they don't understand the language, and they don't understand the sounds of the trumpet. They need a messenger to literally go. So the messenger goes out to them, and the messenger actually tells them in their own language the proclamation that the other two groups have already heard. And that's why in Revelation you see the three angels' messages going out, and they're actually messengers going out to proclaim to every nation, tribe, language, and people in their language what the eternal proclamation is, so they can make a choice. And so the book of Revelation really follows this kingdom dynamic, that when the king made a decree, how that decree was dispensed. You see that in the book of Ezra, and also in the book of Esther. When they make a decree, then they write the decree and they post it, and then there's trumpeters that sound it around to the kingdom, and then they send out messengers to the farthest part of the realm, so everybody gets the message. So that's literally how it was done in the ancient world. So that's why we use the phrase three angels' messages, by the way. That's why the structure of Revelation 5 is actually the whole book of Revelation. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's why, like, there's three apartments in the sanctuary. There's the holy place, most holy place, the holy place, and then the outer court. Or you could say it's the sanctuary itself, the holy place and the most holy place, and then the outer court is the second, and then outside of the sanctuary is the realm of the darkness. That's the third realm. So three parts of the kingdom. And it makes sense, obviously, that the Bible would use kingdom language. If a king is being enthroned, coronated and placed on the throne, then it's going to use kingdom language to describe the event. And that's exactly what it does. I also think it's cool that the second group is described, 10,000 times 10,000s and thousands of thousands. That's literally 144,000. That's just cool, the way that it says the same thing in different ways. So each of those three songs, each of those three groups, there's sevens connected to them. And of course, this goes back to the sevens of the one on the throne, right? He has 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent into all the earth, right? So the threes and the sevens just kind of jump at you and grab you when you read Revelation 5, and the repetition of them just reinforces all this imagery that we're describing. And it literally is tied back to the book of Daniel, as I mentioned. Yeah, obviously it makes sense that the three angels' messages, when you begin to understand them, you begin to see them everywhere. That only makes sense.